I'm Alfred Marx. I'm the CEO of the Megatron company in Germany. And just to give you a small background, what's going on, because I started with communications, then later on I was at Siemens doing some interesting stuff. And today I'm working in different business areas, so I still do software development, but also a lot of consulting, project management, and crisis management. So I come up if some people burned some money and they didn't receive any results, so then it's my turn and they ask me what's going on. And that is the reason why we had a lot of these projects. I just speed this up. If someone is interested, you can see this in the documents. Okay, so why did I come with the company to ERP Next? So the ongoing question, if you are in the consulting business, is this: how can I find a really good ERP solution for small and mid-range businesses that the customers can operate, customize, and afford? Because what does this mean sometimes? It's something like this. Because in some areas you get some solutions, you think they are cheap and nice, but finally they don't fit anyway. And based on that, you have two choices normally. Whether you use cheap and ready-to-run solutions that you can buy, for example, at MediaMarkt or in whatever shop, then it looks like this, that as we see in the picture, the small engine, it's cheap, it's easy, but it's overloaded with the demands, because a lot of the customers come around and say, okay, we get a cheap solution, and this cheap solution should do it at all. And then they learn, which is sometimes connected with a little bit bad experience, that this don't work. The next thing you can do is you go to the big players. This is also funny, because if you do so, you have an engine like this, but at this time, the overload doesn't come from the demands the customer has. The overload comes from functionality, complexity, and sometimes, if you look in some areas, it's, for example, I made some experience with SAP and also with the Microsoft Dynamics AX. And if you are in this area, you figure out it's a great system. It can basically do anything. But the problem is, it's complicated to handle, it's expensive, and the next thing is that sometimes you even can't find any consultant in the market who knows it at all. So I made some experience with, for example, financial consolidation. So where some customers, even with the consultants, came to the conclusion they would like to do financial consolidation, for example, with an extra BI system where they spend another 200K. And it was complete nonsense, because what came out was that we can do it with AX itself, and it works. But nobody knew it, and nobody believed in Microsoft products at this time, for example. So based on that, we looked around, and I said, hey, there must be something else. And in the past, I had a vision. And the vision was that if we have some consultants that can talk to the customer and understand the demands, because one thing is talking to the customer and the other stuff is that you need someone who is understanding what they are talking about. And I have one of these experiences with me, and I share the information about this in a few minutes. And the situation is, if you do this, then it should be possible that the consultant itself, connected with a good framework and a good base product, can put the components like bricks in the, if you have Lego, for example, then you can do it. You build your house, you build your car just using bricks, and you put the bricks together, and that's it. And so based on that, we searched for a long time how we can do this. And what came up? ERP Next and Frappy Framework. Because, and I'm very critical, because I just told you that sometimes I come up and based on my occupation and the problems that I have to fix sometimes, I don't believe anyone. And this is the point where I went into details and looked around what's going on. And what I found out is, if you just look a little bit over the product, over the documentation, and you try it out, then you come finally to a conclusion saying, it's an easy installation, you can easily configure it, the customization is quite easy. As we already have seen in the presentation about the Django and the Frappy situation, that you can see that a lot of stuff comes with the framework already, and it's ready to run. And the next thing is, you can also have an easy handling collaboration support, which is in some areas of the customer really, really important, because the most important thing for some customers is that you can follow the full path of communication that happens together with the customer or internally with the department, so that you can figure out, for example, what is done with this production order, who did something with it, you have to see what's going on, and so on. This is very important. Okay, then open source. So I'm, let's say, yeah, I liked open source from the beginning, because we did a lot with open source already, so it was very welcome. And we have the community support, which is really, really important. Because if you don't have community support, you have the problem that you depend on the company developing or offering the system. If they go bankrupt or they change strategy or whatever, then you are lost. And this might lead to an, let's say, expensive experience. So let's boogie. Based on that, we can use Frappy Framework, we can use ERP Next. And the situation is, now I try to tell you a little bit about the projects we have right now, because there are some to come and something is in planning, but I just tell you what we are doing right now in this area. The first thing is, we have heard yesterday that the Frappy Framework and all this stuff can be used for administration applications, so this has nothing to do with ERP. We produced ourselves an output management system, which is at some customers worldwide used. And we needed a new administration platform. And so this was the first point where we started to use this. So what does it mean? This is an individual mix of Frappy Framework. We have the collaboration tools and some individual extensions that we needed, which we program ourselves. The next thing is that we have a customer where we just made this experience. They started with a product saying, oh, it's not as expensive. We can do everything, there is no problem. And then finally they find out nothing worked. And this company in here is a small company, but they, as you can see on the picture, they produce stairs. But not only stairs as you know it, special kind of stairs, which are individual for the customer. They do a lot of different materials and all this stuff and so on. And they came over and I had to fix it, because they had a company they had a contract with, and they didn't do anything. Even the proposals were completely wrong calculated. So in the tax area, they calculated the tax amounts wrong and all this stuff, and they lost some orders because of this. Because you can imagine they are working with architects and so on, and if you send something out, and if you have in the proposal area, you need to make some alternatives, and if the system calculates wrong, what happens? So the architect gets a proposal saying, oh, this is much too expensive. The real world is the system calculated wrong because they added all the alternatives together, and then so basically they did not get a contract. So that's the way it works. Okay, starting in here, they also had special demands because, as I mentioned, we have the problem with the stairs. And as they make high quality stairs, individual products, and they do production individual for each customer, so you can imagine there must be many information about like flow text, showing them pictures and all this stuff. And we had to include all this information. First of all, we have to give them the opportunity to enter these data. Then they have for the stairs special rules and regulations. What they did first in an Excel sheet, they started with the Excel sheet to make the stair calculation, to figure out what is the price. And there are a lot of factors going into this calculation. And based on that, we had first to create a new module within ERP Next, which is the stair generator, they call it, where we have all the rules and regulations how to calculate the stair. So what comes up finally is a complete stair calculation that they can use for proposal. So that means we have an integration in the proposal module, and it also goes through orders, invoicing, because they have special kind of invoicing. Normally they do it like this, that at the beginning you make some down payments, and later on there are some positions which are really built by the real need. So for example, if they figured out that they calculated they need a handrail for maybe 5 meters, and then they figure out that it's not 5, it's 6 meters because of whatever. So they have also not fixed orders. These orders are dynamic. So finally, if you make the final invoice, then you have to consider that this information is processed correctly. Okay, and the next thing is, as you can imagine, the proposals. They must look nice. So that means we have to handle floating text. We have to handle something like subtotals within the document at any place. And they need to be free to handle it how they like it, because sometimes based on marketing purpose and so on, something changes, and so you have to handle this. Okay, what have we done? Okay, we used FRAPI framework also, then ERP Next standard modules, and we created individual extensions. So at this project, we are in the testing phase of the first stage right now, and then after this is approved, then we go to the next stage, which is going about the invoicing and the orders and all this stuff. Okay, so that's about this. Then we have another project, which is an internal one, which has basically also nothing to do with the ERP. It's the so-called project auditor. I just told you that we are sometimes making analysis of existing projects, figuring out what's going on and are there any problems and how you can fix them and so on. And this is normally a really complicated process because you need some appointments at the customer side. You have to talk to them. You have to figure out what kind of documentation they have and so on. And finally, you have to do something like a judgment. Say, hey, it's good, it's not good, whatever. And so we planned to have the so-called project auditor, which is nothing more than like finding out the project temperature and like an expert system to just tell them, okay, in the beginning you can do this, you can do that. What is the final conclusion and the goal? Okay, first of all, we would like to reduce the amount of money they spend for the first analysis. And the second one is that we would like to generate additional business, as you can imagine. That's the point behind of this. So coming to the developments we made. So there are a few because we had to change something in the CRM area because they want to have a special rule set for CRM. But at this time, because I was asked to do it within 10 or 15 minutes, so I had just to compress it a little bit. And so therefore I focused only on one thing that we already have seen from the STAIR company. I focused on the document plugin extension. So because the problem is, using FRAPI framework and ERP Next, you can do a lot of things with the reports. It's quite easy and it's good, but the flow text situation with the within lying layers of subtotals and whatever is a little bit complicated. So we had two choices. One choice was, okay, we make an individual development exactly for this customer, which means we have to maintain it. It's not usable for others, and maybe we do the same thing in the next project again. Or, on the other hand, we think about creating a module which can do this dynamically. And that's what we did. So, the demands at the beginning were creation of high-quality documents containing individual text flow, images, data, and context, specific formatting using the corporate design of the customer. So if someone looks at this the first time, said, hey, quite easy, because they can do it already. Because we have a header, we have a footer, we can put in this, and it's starting to get complicated if you have different logos, if you have a first page, like in the regular correspondence, and you have a second page, which is a little bit different, so you have to think how to handle this. And so, what have we done? We started, let's speed this up a little bit, using a box model, and the box model is like in ERP Next or FRAPI, you can just maintain it with the web interface, so you can define how this looks like, Then you can define separate sections, and within these sections you also can define processing. That means you can do something like this, that if you use one of these sections, and we come to this with the document flow right away, you can also say before rendering something, after rendering something. You even can do conditional rendering. That means only if this is like that and I'm on page greater than 1, then do this and that. And this is within the solution, and you can maintain this and configure this through the web interface by the module. Okay, so if we compare this, then you see the real document flow, what we get on data, is a little bit different. So we have the address block over here. We have something like Nuremberg, whatever date, and so on. And we have maybe floating text. We have items or whatever on a table basis. we have maybe some special conditions, payment conditions or whatever we have to give to the customer. And this information may be differ due to the object or the entity we are talking about. And therefore, the problem is how to bring together this data, because we have a relationship management in the dictionary in Frappy also. And so what we did, we just used this and created a relational management. So that means you have a document, for example, a proposal, and the proposal needs, for example, in our case, a building project. The building project knows the end consumer. The building project knows the architect. We know the stair and all the detailed information. And what the system does in this interface, if you just push the button, the data is brought together automatically. So you have basically a data tree, and within this data tree, you can render all your documents as you like. That's the idea behind all this. And how does it look like? You see, the situation is we start here with the water pipe, with the secure water pipe ink saying, hey, it's really great that you are our customer. Then you can have here all the items. And, sorry. Okay, should work. Now it looks better. Yeah. And here, for example, you can do something like a subtotal. Yeah. Because normally they wanted to have the subtotal on the same position, even if you have a floating text that is to be continued. Yeah. Okay. That's what we did. And yeah, how to implement it, because we did it this way, that you can use this as a Frappy script, which you can just manage and assign to each of your document types. So whatever you want to do, whether you print orders or invoices or proposals or whatever, you can implement this quite quickly just by adding a user-defined button. And with the user-defined button, you can do this. Okay. Then we put in something that the rendered documents are automatically stored in HTML in the database. And you can convert out of this PDFs and also attach the documents to the related doc types. That means, so I can see with the PDF files the history of, for example, the proposal. So I can figure out what happened, and I can use and have access to this at any time using the PDF viewer. Okay, so how does this look? This is, for example, just a test screen containing here our generate PDF and anhängen means attach button, yeah, that we put in. And based on that, you just push the button. And what happens is, it's like this. First, you get a preview. You can save the preview. If you say save, then the preview is saved, as it says, in the document database, and you have the document. And then you can also create PDFs. So for example, this is such one of the subtotal stuff. And you can also calculate. That means if you have any items of the proposal or the order or whatever, you can just ensure that this is always the right value and the right amount. Okay. So that's all. Thank you very much.